Okay, let's start with a tough one. When does following the law stop? And, well, when does following your conscience start?
That's the eternal question, isn't it?
It is. And today we're looking at a situation where breaking the law is actually framed as a holy crime.
Yeah, that tension, that direct clash between what the state demands and what maybe the gods demand, or just your own deep family loyalty. That's precisely why this book, Antigone, written, nearly 2,500 years ago, still hits so hard.
It really does. We're about to unpack a literary masterpiece that genuinely forces you, the listener, to think about the rules you follow and maybe the ones you wouldn't.
Before we properly jump in, though, just a quick note for everyone listening.
Right. You are experiencing a unique two-voice AI conversation. This is powered by Google's NotebookLM, and the idea is to give you a deeper, maybe more dynamic analysis of the book.
And the book is, of course, Antigone by Sophocles, an incredible ancient Greek tragedian.
Yeah, and Sophocles wasn't just some playwright scribbling away. He had this reputation, didn't he, as like a really solid citizen, deeply religious.
Exactly. He was respected. So that gave his work enormous credibility, real ethical weight. When he tackled these big questions about duty, Athenians listened. They had to.
So the specific problem the exigent Sophocles was tapping into, it was the messy aftermath of a civil war, right?
Absolutely. A brutal one. And that sets up the core conflict.
Yeah.
You've got this brand new state law clashing head-on with a deeply sacred family obligation.
Our mission here really is to break down how Sophocles uses rhetoric, the art of argument, to make this conflict feel so immediate, so demanding, and frankly, so timelessly controversial.
And, analysis like this, digging into the arguments and the emotions, it's about inspiring reflection and rational thought.
Which is very much in the spirit of the educational and intellectually engaging content we explore, like in our Mindful Moments features and other analysis on our YouTube channel.
Definitely. Okay, so context. To really get Antigone, you have to picture Athens around, say, 442 to 440 BCE.
A time of political change, flux even.
Big time. And the audience, these were Athenian citizens. They cared deeply about piety, about the laws of the city, about ethical behavior. They weren't just passive viewers.
And they'd just come through some rough times, hadn't they? So the idea of keeping the state stable, even if the methods were harsh, must have seemed pretty important.
Hugely important. But Sophocles wasn't just writing for his contemporaries. He was setting up this timeless scenario, really for anyone, for you listening now, wrestling with that age-old tension between authority and your own conscience.
So the actual story centers on Antigone. She decides to defy her uncle, who happens to be the new king, Creon.
Right. Creon has laid down the law. Antigone's brother, Polynices, fought against the city, died a traitor in Creon's eyes, and therefore no burial. Absolutely forbidden.
Which, for the ancient Greeks, was horrifying. Leaving a body unburied meant the soul couldn't rest. It was a spiritual catastrophe.
Precisely. And the play itself is pure classical tragedy. Sophocles throws everything at us. You've got these powerful choral odes commenting on the action, incredibly intense dialogue, and layers of dramatic irony.
The whole feeling is just heavy, grave, tragic, yeah, but also really resolute. You feel Antigone's moral certainty clashing against Creon's, well, his rigid authority, his hubris, really.
Yeah, hubris is the word. And the purpose becomes crystal clear. Sophocles is pushing the audience, pushing us to think hard about the limits of state power. Where do family obligations fit in? What about divine law?
It forces that question. Where should your personal morality give way to civic duty? Or should it? Ever?
Okay, so that leads us right into the heart of it.
Yeah.
The rhetorical battle. This isn't just people arguing. It's a fundamental clash of logos, of logical justification.
And they're based on completely different ideas of what order even means.
Exactly. Antigone's logic. It's all about tradition, religious custom, what she sees as the eternal, unwritten laws of the gods, honoring the dead, especially family. It's about filial kinship duty.
Which, to the Athenian audience, would have resonated deeply. That's a powerful argument from tradition and piety.
Absolutely. But then you have Creon.
Wait, but if Antigone's logic is so strong, rooted in the divine, why doesn't everyone just agree with her? Isn't the power of the tragedy that Creon also has a point, however flawed?
Precisely. That's the genius and the tragedy. Creon's logos appeals to something equally vital, especially right after a civil war. Civic stability. The rule of nomos, the man-made law of the state.
His argument is basically, look, I just stopped us from tearing ourselves apart. If I let a traitor be buried with honor, the state collapses back into chaos. Order must prevail.
It's an argument for immediate practical security. And the tragedy unfolds because In this specific terrible situation, these two legitimate forms of order, divine family and civic, are completely incompatible. One has to break.
Okay, so that's logos. What about ethos? The appeal to credibility, to character. How does Sophocles build that?
He does it masterfully. For Antigone, a young woman standing up to a king, her ethos comes from her unwavering moral conviction. She invokes the gods, the sacred rites. She claims the ethical high ground.
So even though she's breaking Creon's law, the audience sees her integrity, her commitment to this higher principle.
Right. Creon, on the other hand, builds his ethos entirely on his position. His authority comes from the state, from his decrees, his power as ruler. It's temporal official power.
While hers is spiritual, maybe eternal.
That's the contrast Sophocles draws. Creon looks strong in the moment, wielding the power of the state, but Antigone's stance hints at a deeper, more enduring moral authority. It makes Creon seem ultimately brittle.
And then there's pathos, the emotional core. How does Sophocles pull us in emotionally?
Oh, it's overwhelming. Mostly through Antigone herself, her speeches.
Mhm.
They just radiate sorrow, defiance, isolation. You feel for her facing death basically alone for what she believes in.
That deep connection to family against the coldness of state decree, that's instantly relatable, isn't it?
Absolutely. And she has lines that just grab you. Remember when she says something like, "Enough, give me glory. What greater glory could I win than to give my own brother a decent burial?"
Wow. Yeah. That links her personal grief directly to this idea of eternal honor. It's not just about defying Creon, it's about something much bigger.
Exactly. And the language Sophocles uses, it's often quite plain actually, but incredibly potent. It allows these sudden shifts from fierce arguments to these heart-wrenching laments.
Which just ramps up the emotional intensity, the pathos, and the way the sentences are structured, especially Creon's decrees or Antigone's declarations. They feel so final. Like there's no turning back for either of them.
No ambiguity at all. They're locked onto their paths, heading straight for the tragic conclusion.
So digging deeper now, why does this book still resonate so strongly? Let's talk about Sophocles' specific rhetorical strategies. You mentioned that amazing phrase earlier, holy crime.
Yes. That metaphor is just perfect, isn't it? It captures the whole dilemma in 2 words.
It really does. The act of burial, completely illegal by Creon's law, is simultaneously presented as something sacred, divinely required.
Sophocles deliberately jams the legal violation right up against the religious duty. It shows you, in this tragic world, sometimes doing the right thing is breaking the law. Duty is disobedience.
And then there's the irony. Dramatic irony is huge here, right? The audience kind of knows where this is going.
Absolutely key. We, the audience, understand the dangers of Creon's pride, his hubris, and his disregard for the divine signs, far better than he does. But how does Sophocles make sure even an audience less familiar with all the myths feels that impending doom?
Well, he builds Creon's inflexibility step by step, doesn't he? Every time someone tries to warn him his own son, Haman, the blind prophet Tiresias, and he just brushes them off.
Each dismissal tightens the knot.
Exactly. We see the warnings, we see his pride blinding him. We're basically forced to watch him walk into disaster thinking he's saving the state, when actually his rigidity is destroying his own family. It makes us almost complicit.
That's a great way to put it. And he uses other structural tricks too, like parallelism, setting Antigone side by side with her sister Ismene.
Right. Ismene is much more cautious, pragmatic. She represents, well, maybe common sense or fear of authority.
Yeah, perhaps fear, perhaps just the different calculation of risk and duty. Antigone is absolute principle. Ismene represents compromise, maybe. Their contrast forces you to think, okay, which approach is right, or is neither fully right?
And Sophocles peppers the play with these probing rhetorical questions, constantly making the characters and the audience challenge whether human law or divine law holds true justice.
It all comes together to show that Sophocles isn't just using rhetoric for fancy speeches. The arguments are the action. They were the furnace where these characters forged their choices, leading directly to the tragic outcome.
So the play forces us to see the devastating results of both extremes. Creon's unbending authority on one side.
And maybe even Antigone's, you could argue, somewhat blind piety on the other. It's a warning about human limits from both directions.
Antigone's principled stand is heroic, but it leads to death. Creon's attempt to enforce order leads to utter devastation for him personally. It's a stark meditation on those limits.
And Sophocles makes it work, makes it endure, because the powerful emotions are always grounded in these competing logics, appeals to gods, family, state order. It feels intellectually solid, even while it's emotionally wrenching.
That careful balance, the fact that it explores this crisis between personal conscience, religious duty, and state law without giving an easy answer,
Yeah.
that's why it still speaks to us, isn't it? Ancient Athenians, modern listeners. It keeps demanding that we reflect.
Exactly. And that kind of deep thinking, wrestling with complex ethics through careful analysis, is precisely what we encourage. It's the kind of engagement you'll find in our Mindful Moments segments and across the content on our YouTube channel. We want these ideas to stick with you.
So it leaves us pondering that fundamental question, doesn't it? If you have compelling arguments rooted in divine will, family loyalty, and civic order, all pulling in different directions, who gets to define what integrity really means within any culture's logic?
And maybe more pointedly for each of us listening, when your deepest moral conviction runs smack into the law, which one wins? And are you truly prepared for the price of that choice?
It really forces you to examine your own allegiances, doesn't it? And what you'd ultimately be willing to sacrifice for them.
Death, isolation, loss. These are the stakes Antigone lays bare.
To continue exploring these kinds of challenging ethical questions, definitely check out the in-depth book summary. You can find the link right here on screen. It builds on the analysis we've unpacked in this conversation.
And please do explore our other genre-based book podcasts over at Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. We really hope you'll subscribe, share this exploration with others, perhaps purchase the book through our link if you're inspired, and above all, keep thinking critically.